Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. I want to talk with you today about some of the issues that are facing us probably within the next few months as a result of A, the new Omnibus bill passing, and then B, the concerted attack on the Second Amendment. So for those of you who have been paying attention, uh, the the conservative base that put the president in office, and also in many cases the registered Democrats who flipped over to vote for President Trump based on conservative spending, they've been betrayed over the past few weeks and months pretty steadily. And I think that as a result of this, that there's going to be a probably pretty significant uptick in the amount of seats that are in Democrat controlled hands in the midterm elections as a result of the midterm elections. So yesterday, the president, despite saying earlier that he would veto this new spending bill, basically just went for it under the continued and familiar refrain of military spending, military spending, military spending. Folks, for those of us who are really, really tired of having the government steal our money and then give it away to people who refuse to work or who come here from crap hole countries and then get on the dole out. If you're like me, tax season was not fun this year. Tax season is never fun. I'm not cool with government subsidized theft, especially in the form of an income tax, which was not something our founding fathers were any way, shape, or form cool with. If you're like me, you're about up to here. And I even yesterday actually turned on different talk shows, radio talk shows, just to listen to people, just to see, okay, am I the crazy one here? Nope. There's a lot of people right now who are just about up to here with it. Because let's face it, when you've got a concerted effort from the top down to continue the same tax and spend without any significant reform. Okay, so we had a tax cut. Well, guess what? That tax cut doesn't help when your healthcare premiums have quadrupled and your deductible has increased sixfold. I'm sorry, but those cuts are not enough. And whatever happened to repeal and replace Obamacare on day one, that hasn't happened, okay? So the same tax and spend, expand the military industrial complex. And listen, I'm part of a family that has military people in it, okay? The veterans are part of my lifeblood, and the other half of my heart belongs to a former Marine grunt. So I'm cool with supporting the military if we're in the midst of a declared war, but we're not in the midst of a declared war. We've been in the midst of police actions, and in this most recent spending bill, we are spending more money to enforce the borders of countries in the Middle East than we are our own. So there's a lot of problems here, folks. In the midst of all of this, we have a concerted, coordinated attack on the Second Amendment and on law-abiding free citizens' ability to keep and bear arms, right down to Oregon's new bill that essentially amounts to gun confiscation. Magazines, semi-automatic rifles, go right on down the list. We've got, who would have thought that Florida, Republican Florida, well, it's not anymore with all the refugees and the New York transplants. It's going to be purple if it isn't, blue, straight up blue in some parts. It's just very troubling. It's very, very troubling. And I think good people are there. The way that I view the national environment right now, it's like a room full of gasoline vapors just waiting for that match. And it isn't just here. That's the thing. It isn't just here. Globally, all across the world right now, in Europe, in Britain, for sure, they're having tremendous troubles with essentially a soft invasion from the Islamic hordes coming up and out of the Middle East, and of the destabilization that comes as a result of President Obama's meddling. Oh, I guess all those people who were so, yay, we're doves, who were so philosophically opposed to war, they were completely silent for the most part. I know there are some people who were legit, but for the most part, the Democrats were all about spending on the military industrial complex and on expanding wars during the Obama administration. And I think that of course was was for a purpose. If you can destabilize an area, everywhere that we go and have a police action, we are going to receive refugees because of the guilt associated with it. We're going to receive refugees from those countries. And so when you've got regional destabilization in the Middle East, we get refugees from there. So there was a reason why Obama supported all of that. And that was because the more refugees that come in, the more Democrat Party voters there are. And oh, by the way, in the midst of all this omnibus spending bill that just got passed, there's no voter ID. There's no voter ID. There's no national concealed carry reciprocity. So all these people who think that Trump is so smart and that he's gonna get a deal, you are absolutely sold out. And I don't know what sort of leave of senses people are taking here. When it comes to the president and his actions, listen, let's be principled here, and let's not delegate our critical thought into some sort of magical thinking that you have a messiah figure who somehow is so much smarter than everybody else. And you just don't understand. He's doing deals. No, that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. Face the facts in front of you. When you put a person in office who doesn't have any consistent history of embracing limited government and constitutional principles, you cannot be surprised when at the drop of a hat, whenever it's convenient, those non-existent principles that were given some nominal moniker of lip service during the election season are conveniently tossed aside for some limited deal of what I don't know. But I'd say what probably happened is the Democrats probably promised him something, and of course they're going to renege because they're a bunch of liars. And for what purpose, I don't know. But the bottom line is we're not going to get national concealed carry reciprocity. The spending bill has just gotten passed, which means that ultimately you and I are going to be paying more taxes. People who are in my age group, in the 30-somethings, we're never going to see Social Security. So I'm having a problem swallowing the fact that I am paying, especially as a self-employed person, I am paying a penalty and a premium for employing myself and putting that money into a fund that is being stolen from me, that is never going to be turned back. I'm never going to see Social Security. And eventually, I think what's going to end up happening is that the feds are going to run out of money. They already have run out of money. And so what they keep doing is printing and printing and printing. But eventually that's not going to be enough. And so I think it's more than reasonable to assume at some point that they're going to seize people's private retirement accounts. What is there to stop them? What is there to stop them? We're in a state right now of anarchy, and not in the good sense, despite what people think is anarchy is a form of freedom here. No, we're talking about wanton disregard for the law from the top down. The federal government is the instigator of anarchy. Since when do we have the Clintons who can essentially get away with murder? And oh yeah, the Clinton Chronicles, if you can put that one into YouTube, if it hasn't been taken down yet for being some sort of hate crime. The Clintons are very, very dirty, dastardly people. They're very sick and twisted people, and they have been connected to multiple murders and have not been held to account for it. When you have people who are serially breaking the law, who are just wicked, vile, criminal people, and they are not held to account because they are to some higher standard than apparently everybody else is, anarchy is being embraced from the top down. And so that's going to have trickle-down effects into people. There is nothing to stop them. What mechanism do you have for redress of grievances if the federal government did decide to take people's privately owned accounts? There's nothing. So folks, in the midst of all of this, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of things happening right now that are just kind of circulating in my mind in the back of things. Folks, we are ripe for an armed revolution. And on one hand, people may say, oh, that's great. Listen, it is very easy. It is very easy to pull things down. Having order enough to build them back up again, that is a different story. And thank God, in our history with the American Revolution, there were enough principled, God-fearing, disciplined people who knew that their rights came from God and who knew to what limited point fighting needed to go in order to restore those natural rights. But now, in the country that we have, in the world in which we live, people's belief, even if you don't believe in God, people's belief in natural rights, it's not there anymore. When you've got the vast majority of millennials who say that at one particular poll that the First Amendment is dangerous and should be abolished, the people's ability to, what is the First Amendment? To freely speak, to practice religion, to freely assemble without being molested, freedom of the press. All of this is dangerous when this is the reality, when the majority has become destructive to basic human rights, to rights given to us by our Creator or observable in nature. Folks, this is a very, very dark time that we're finding ourselves in. And so that's my breakdown, man. Like, that's what I'm seeing here. And I'm not saying this to try and stir up fear in people. I'm saying this because if you are paying attention, nothing has changed. In fact, and I've been saying this for years, when it was the choice between President Trump or a future, God help us, President Clinton, I kept telling people, listen, like, one buys you 3 years, the other buys you 5, if you're lucky. All right. That's how I viewed it. And I'm seeing that that's kind of how things are shaping up right now. In the midst of all this global instability, in the midst of extreme economic volatility, when I'm seeing a concerted effort across big data, deep state, all of this to coming after law-abiding citizens' firearms, that should put your antenna up. Okay, they're anticipating something. They're anticipating it. What is it? That's up to you and what your appraisal of the situation is. But there's a reason why, in the midst of all of this, in the midst of a Republican-controlled House, Senate, and a Republican, in whatever degree, controlled executive branch, that there's been more gun control legislation successfully passed than under the Obama administration. You should be paying attention to that. You should way be paying attention to that. And we should be ready. We should be making preparations. You should have your food supplies stored up. You should have your medical supplies stored up. Like, you should. Now think about this. 6 years ago, if you'd been watching my channel and following the advice, and I'm not saying this from, oh, look how awesome Patriot Nurse is. Just, I think that the Lord just put stuff out there for people. If you'd have been paying attention to the medical supplies and storing things up and getting educated and getting your skills ready, then if your premiums quadrupled or your deductible increased sixfold and you could no longer afford your insurance, you're going to be better off than most people, because you're going to have these supplies stored up. You're going to know how to use them. You're going to know how to avoid costly trips to the ER by having basic assessment skills. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why I teach the classes and do what I do. Now, folks, this is some very troubling times, and I haven't been posting as much here on YouTube because of censorship issues, because of the strikes and all this stuff. I've been moving my stuff over to Patreon, and that's the format that I'm going to use. So if you've enjoyed the videos, I hope that you will consider chipping in $1 or whatever to the Patreon account. I'll put a link in the description box below. But folks, this attack on the Second Amendment and on Constitution-loving, God-fearing American patriots, this is going to affect our ability to communicate, and we need to make sure that we have the ability to communicate with each other. And that's one of the reasons why I've launched the Patreon account. So I hope you'll consider supporting me there, or chipping in $1 if you found value in the videos. I hope you did find value in the videos. Even if you can't, it's not possible for you to support with $1, I would appreciate your support and prayers wise, because Lord knows we all need it now. But if you did enjoy the video, I hope you'll subscribe to me. You can like me on Facebook, and you can also support me on Patreon. Guys, I hope you have a wonderful week. Stay sharp, and let's be focused on our priorities, and let's continue to prepare. For now, it's Patriot Nurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.